17 years after Ghostbusters, director Ivan Reitman tried to recapture some of that magic with sci-fi comedy Evolution. They swapped out ghosts for aliens and cast Fox Mulder himself in the starring role. And since it was 2001, they also got Stifler from American Pie. What a time capsule. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
Do you? That's a bit of a promise, because this movie's actually about aliens coming and maybe not in peace. This is a science fiction movie podcast, and today we are talking about Evolution, a sci-fi comedy from 2001, which won a Patreon vote. We put a vote up every month for an episode coming up, and this was all alien-based movies from this decade, give or take, the 2000s, and this was the winner. And this is a movie that I saw in theaters when it came out. Ooh. I was 12 years old, wow. Just starting high school at the time, or secondary school to be more precise with the titling, because it's the UK. But yeah, I hadn't seen it though in like 20 years, so you know, yeah. we'll see how my memories of it and how I currently feel about it, like how much they align. We'll find out.
Yeah, this one new to me. I had never seen it, not in theaters or anything, though I do have very, very strong memories of this always being on the shelf at Blockbuster.
Sure.
This was always one that you walked into the video store and it was right there.
Yeah, I think the marketing is memorable as well, because it's got that big logo, which is the smiley face with the three eyes, and I think the poster in the movie theater is kind of like cemented in my brain. So,
oh yeah.
You know, we'll find out. But notably, it's directed by Ivan Reitman, who did Ghostbusters. And I think most people who watch this, if they've seen Ghostbusters, might, you know, notice a few, like, similarities between them. Clearly, there was an attempt at taking the formula and trying to have lightning strike twice. And that's not even talking about the Dan Aykroyd, like, sort of extended cameo that comes up at some point. That's just in general with how it functions, how you've got these outsiders, there's something to fight, they're not being taken seriously. Just, you know, with some differences in some places, which we'll discuss in a minute. But we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support the show and all the other shows here by supporting us on Patreon and getting bonus things over there, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. Also, YouTube membership's also a valid way of supporting us. Always appreciated. But yeah, the basic premise of Evolution is an asteroid crash lands in Arizona, and there's some life forms kind of just tied to it. You know, they're on it, and some local professors at a community college, played by David Duchovny and Orlando Jones, not Jordan. Yes. They come in and, you know, they're the ones who are sort of investigating. There are Venkman and our Stans, basically.
Yeah, it's weird that Egon is kind of just spread across, but also its own separate character as well.
Yeah, I mean, personality-wise, they don't really quite fit them. I mean, they kind of do to an extent, but they're sort of meshed up differently in terms of traits. But we'll get into comparisons a bit later. I think for now we'll just say, David, what did you think of Evolution?
So you kind of just took half of the wind out of my sails on that, because I was gonna just say, like, it's Ghostbusters. Like, it's so much of just feeling like an adaptation of Ghostbusters into kind of the early 2000s style of comedy that's sort of more, I don't want to call it slapstick because it's not right, but you know, your American Pie sort of thing, where we also even have Stifler makes an appearance in this.
He's arguably the third lead.
yeah, I'd say so. It's, if I'm talking about what the movie is objectively, I see that, I understand that, but I think subjectively, in my own opinion, it's so much lesser than that because none of the comedy really lands for me. I think back to this movie and I try to think to any joke that like really lands, and I could maybe come up with like one or two that got a chuckle out of me, but it's just not there for a comedy. And I think that's honestly the biggest detriment to the movie, because it sells itself. The tone of it is so much comedy, more so than like, a kind of action movie or a thrill ride of trying to get these aliens under control. Like, it's just selling it off the comedy aspect, and it just didn't work for me. In terms of the actual plot and stuff itself, it's so similar to Ghostbusters that I also think that that's at a detriment when it's not working, because it is an issue of, I'm making these comparisons. I am thinking of how much better this was done in Ghostbusters. And for anyone who watched Collector's Cut, I love Ghostbusters. I gave that a ridiculously high score. It is a fantastic movie, but like, this one just felt like it was a pastiche. It was trying to do Ghostbusters in a more updated way that wasn't a reboot, and it just didn't end up working. It was something else. My only other critique just right here is characterization wise, I don't feel like I ever really got a good grasp on the characters themselves. I can see their mappings to the Ghostbusters, but if I'm looking at them ignoring that, it feels like none of them really have any character that I see developed. It's all just what I'm told these characters are. And then the development is just not really there at any point. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty hard pass from me, honestly.
A hard pass. Yeah, this was weird starting the movie, just because I'm like, okay, I remember going to see this. I remember, and there was a lot of those moments throughout as I'm like, oh yeah, this bit, or oh yeah, this line, or like there was a lot of things sort of flashing back as they were happening throughout. But yeah, it's not good. It's not particularly good at all. It's not the worst thing ever. But the comedy, I agree, does not really work. It mostly falls flat. Some of it has aged kind of weird. Like, this movie is obsessed with doing kind of slightly raunchy jokes, and it's like, they're not funny. And I don't think any one of them is like particularly like, oh, you've overstepped a line there, and this is like a really problematic thing in hindsight. But I think them as a collective, it feels a little problematic, because it feels like they were obsessed with constantly doing, oh, the professor wants to bang his students, and there's going to be lots of references to him looking at material and just being obsessed with it. And it feels just a little bit skeevy in that sense, but it's all played for like, isn't this greatly funny? And I guess, yeah, it comes from that American Pie era, maybe. But the difference is, though, is that the characters in American Pie were all of that age where they were immature and cared about sex and whatnot. Here, this is the middle-aged man, sort of acting like this, and it's just meant to be kind of funny and lighthearted and whatever. So there's that. I don't think that's very funny. There's like a running joke with Julianne Moore's character that's just that she's clumsy, but it never really like amounts to anything or factors into anything. It feels like such an afterthought of like, oh, her character needs to have a thing, so we're going to maybe like 3 or 4 times in the movie have her just trip or something, and that's it. Like that's the whole bit. And that's what I was talking about with the, like, I'm told what the character is. The script is saying, like, here's her thing. She is clumsy. But you're right, there's never any epitome to it. There's no point where we've reached the peak where it comes to mean anything. You said earlier that there's a professor character who like to sleeps with his students or whatever. They hint at that. The character says, like, oh, hey, and other characters saying, well, oh, you're such a horn dog. But the character never actually does anything. Now, to be precise, I never said that. I said he talks about it. Okay, and they hint at it a lot. They never actually follow through on anything. If anything, what I thought they were doing in his introduction, saying this is Orlando Jones's character, I thought they were doing the Indiana Jones thing, where the college girls are throwing themselves at him, but he was going to be like, respectfully kind of like avoiding it. But then like immediately there's jokes about him looking up porn on computers and like cheerleading websites and stuff, and it's like, oh, so he is that type of character? Like, is he? Isn't he? Yeah. Like what are we doing with him here?
His character is also a girls' volleyball coach, and there's kind of this implication that like, oh, it's maybe for a sexual thing, but also later on in the movie, he's just like treating it as a coaching job. And the character asks like, hey, do you ever get to watch the girls shower? And he just flatly is like, yeah, whatever, it's no big deal. Like, sometimes I shower with them. And like, he doesn't play it off as a horny perverted thing. He just plays it off as a coaching thing. And I just really didn't like the characterization of any character in this movie, because it felt like all of them were set up as it's going to be this character, but then they never delivered on it.
No, it feels very paper thin as far as the characters go, in terms of, it feels like it's banking a lot on the idea of like, hey, David Duchovny is Mulder from the X-Files, and he's here fighting aliens. Isn't that funny? And that's it. We're just riding on that. Stifler's basically still kind of playing Stifler, and that's that. Okay, all right. And there's a few faces that pop up though. We mentioned Dan Aykroyd. Ty Burrell's got like a small role in here as a military dude.
This is his first film role.
Oh, really?
As well.
Interesting. And then Ted Levine's like the main military guy. He's like a general who's kind of getting in their way. Most people know him from Silence of the Lambs, but he's popped up in things here or there all over the last 30 years pretty much at this point. So yeah, there's some faces. Sarah Silverman has like a one scene appearance. She pops up. Yeah, okay. So
again, she pops up in kind of that skeevy role. Like it feels like the only reason she's in this part of the script is just for like a little bit of a tease to the audience of sexy stuff.
Well, yeah, but you say that, but even Julianne Moore, who's our female lead, who honestly feels kind of miscast in a comedy like this, but like, her introduction out of nowhere, like there's been like no slapstick pretty much the entire movie, and then she trips, and then immediately the two main characters are like looking at her stockings going, oh, stockings, oh, a garter belt, oh, and they start like discussing her underwear, and I'm like, why? Like honestly, I felt like a pivot at that point in the movie, because that's kind of like, late act one, kind of we've been setting stuff up. Not that it was like a super serious, like taking like a proper science fiction film up to that point. It was definitely in a very particular mode. But there was that moment where the military show up and Julianne Moore's introduced. I felt like immediately it got a lot more juvenile. And just like from that point on, it felt like all of a sudden we're doing jokes where people are showing their ass, or we're talking about sex even more explicitly, or we're doing whatever. And there's just really immature things. Like, for example, there's a scene in this movie where and this, once we actually get to spoilers and we're talking about the context of this, I've got a lot more to say about how absurd it is that they just break into a gun store because there seems to be no justification for it. But they're loading up with shotguns because they're chasing an alien, right? And Sean William Scott, who's like a child, basically, is like, have you ever used one of these before? And he's all excited to be holding a shotgun. And Orlando Jones says, and I quote, "I'm a school teacher. That doesn't make me a pussy." And I'm like, a 12-year-old wrote this. This is so immature in every like manner. Like every joke is about being tough or about making jokes about sex and about how Julianne Moore, she really wants it, right? Yeah, she needs a good humping, and it's supposed to be funny. And I don't find maybe I'm just too old for this now, but it just all feels super low common denominator shit humor.
Yeah. No, I mean, you said it best when you said there's a pivot point when Julianne Moore shows up, because immediately following that scene, we get an entire courtroom deposition where the punchline is David Duchovny made a bunch of soldiers shit their pants. Like, that's it. It's like a 3-minute long sequence, but that's the thing we come back to. And it just... yeah, no, it feels very of the time, and I don't think it's so much more of a, juvenile to adulthood sort of thing. It just more so feels like this was what early 2000s, that raunchy sort of comedy was, and it just doesn't work in this. It's not landing, and I put that a little bit more on like what the genre and how the actors are performing this, where it feels like they almost want to do a bit more of to go back to Ghostbusters, a bit more of a serious, like adventure-ish sort of film where like there's a big threat or something, but the script is just not doing that.
Yeah, it's weird though, because like it's got that raunchy humor in there, but I think one of the problems with it, not that I'm saying it'd be good if it was, but it's also not actually a raunchy movie. Like, it keeps making jokes as if it's in one, but the actual plot and everything going on that they then have to focus on is nothing to do with raunchiness, which is partly why it feels so out of place. It'd be one thing if the plot was about, we need to like seduce the alien, so everything's all sex related or something.
Yeah.
But no, it's not. It's a very Ghostbusters-esque. We have to save the world. Blah 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 blah. And that's all fine, whatever. But like, they keep pivoting to making these jokes, and it just feels like a movie that wasn't written with this stuff included, but then it's like, no, but we have to appeal to the people who just saw American Pie, so we have to shove in these dirty jokes as well. But I also, at the same time, felt a couple of moments where it felt like it was edited down, like because they wanted to get down to PG-13. There's one moment where David Duchovny is basically like being defiant to the general, and he's clearly like saying, I've got something for you right here, and he's clearly grabbing his balls and like doing like a gesture, but it's like under the frame, and I'm like, I bet they had other shots of that where you could see what he was doing, and they have specifically edited in a way so you can actually see what he's grabbing, because it just makes it easier to get the PG-13. I think that's just little moments like that were sticking out to me.
I am actually amazed that you managed to nail this. A little trivia thing, very top trivia on IMDb. Initially written as a Syrian science fiction thriller, Ivan Reitman then hired on 2 additional writers to rewrite the project as a, quote, Ghostbusters-style comedy. The original writer, Dan Jacoby, actually enjoyed the changes so much that he continued working on the film alongside the other writers. So the core base plate of this was serious science fiction thriller, and then the comedy was just grafted on afterwards. Mind you, a bit more worked in because they had the original writer on board, but it was done after the fact.
Okay, that does not surprise me. It feels like that. And you know, one of the funny things about watching movies from the late 90s, early 2000s that we've seen a number of times, especially on Collector's Cut or other show where we go through franchises or we do themes, go check that out if you haven't. It's the same kind of show though. We have the same sort of conversations, just not about sci-fi movies. Is that for some reason I feel like movies from the late 90s and early 2000s, especially movies always do it. There's always some movies that do it, but movies from this era love having the songs. They love having the popular songs that are a hit, and there's a couple of classic ones as well, but it's mostly contemporary stuff. You know, it's mostly here's like this pop song of the day or this, but you know, the very first scene when Seann William Scott rolls up in a car, there's the get out. I don't even know. I don't know what the lyrics are, but like I recognize that. I recognize the song, right? Like a lot of music, I don't know the name. I just recognize it when I hear it. But it's like, okay, yeah, I remember that from the era, and there's a lot of that throughout. And at some points, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's lots of good movies that have good, full, song-filled soundtracks, right? Tarantino does it all the time. But there's kind of like a generic style to the way a lot of movies from this era did it, where it kind of just feels like it's doing it out of obligation. And I kind of felt that at points where it would just cut to a new scene and a song would kick in, and I'm like, this feels less of an artistic choice and more of just, we're supposed to do this.
I always got the vibe from the era of these movies that it's all right, well, we're selling the movie, but also we're going to make an extra little profit on the soundtrack after the fact for people who are going out and buying these CDs because they just loved it that much from the movie.
What's so funny is that sometimes I misremember the U2 song from this same year, I think it is, because I misremember it as Evolution, but it's actually Elevation. But it was a song for the first Tomb Raider movie, and I'm just like, change one vowel and you've got a song for this one. Like, one vowel, that's all you need to change. But anyway, it's that era where there's tons of songs and stuff. The brother from My Name is Earl's in there as well, just to mention him briefly, because it's someone else that I recognized.
It's a very small part. I'm actually surprised that it was a part at all. Like, he got an initial introduction in this movie, and it seems like it's for the sake of, we've got a dumb joke here. And then he comes back, and it's again this is a recurring motif, I feel like, in this movie, where it's just kind of doing something. It doesn't feel like it has a reason to do something. It doesn't feel like there is a motivation to get to a point. They just have to get there, and so they do it. And it's the worst in the third act. In the third act, I feel like they're just, we got to wrap this movie up quick. Here's the thing. All right, we're good.
Yeah. Also, people want to talk about product placement in movies. This one, by the end, it's what's so funny is that it felt really weird and skeevy when it came up, because I'm like, you could have just said like generically what it is. You didn't have to give it a brand. But at the end of the movie, I did not remember this. We literally get like them joking about the fact that they've got product placement by doing an actual ad read right before the credits hit. And I'm like, what? What? This didn't make it okay because you just joked about doing it.
I mean, okay, so apparently, and I don't know how true this is, but apparently this was not actual product placement. Like, Head and Shoulders, which is the product it is by the end, did not pay them money to do this. They did it as sort of a...
even funnier and sadder.
Yeah, well, they were trying to phrase it as sort of a tongue-in-cheek making fun of other product placements by going so over the top with it. But again, the comedy in this movie doesn't land the way it's supposed to, so it comes off as playing it very straight by the time that we hit the end of it.
Yeah. Okay. I guess something to talk about is that I will say for 2001, clearly they put a lot of money into this in the sense of, like, there's a lot of CG, and well, don't get me wrong, it looks like CG from 2001. I think for a comedy in 2001, the CG is definitely of a fairly high standard for the time. Like, obviously it stands out a bit now, but I think at the time I wouldn't have batted an eye at any of this. It would have looked like up there with any other movie coming out. So
yeah, no, absolutely. This, I mean, I can't say specifically what, because my only thoughts go to like the Star Wars prequels, you know, Attack of the Clones was around this time, but obviously that stuff is built around the idea of the CG being at least acceptable. This is below that, but it feels within reasonable, like they put in some effort to making it work instead of it just being chop thrown in like, yeah, is what we got with the basic package.
To put it in a point of comparison, a movie which I think is from the same year, The Mummy Returns, is notorious for having that really bad CG version of The Rock at the end. And this, like, you know, is don't get me wrong, the Mummy movies did have a lot of good effects as well. It was just that one that really stood out as looking like absolute garbage. But this doesn't have anything like that. It's like, oh no, like, you can tell it's CG, but it feels of the higher standard you could have had at a Hollywood studio at the time. So I have no complaints there. I will say, I think the score surprisingly has some decent moments. It doesn't really fit what the movie's actually doing, but it does have like an adventure-y theme that I thought sounded quite good. And I'm like, this sounds like it belongs in a different movie, but it's nice to hear it. Like, the composer put in a bit of effort.
This is when the composer signed on when it was still that serious sci-fi thriller movie. And he's like, oh, here's the score. And they're like, cool, by the way, it's a comedy now.
Yeah, I was like, I'd buy that because it doesn't sound like dark and serious. It sounds more like, I don't know, like the Goonies are going on an adventure or something. But it's just like a decent little couple of motifs and themes for what it is. I mean, it's not super memorable because, like I said, the movie's mostly full of songs rather than its score, but it is there. You know, you can kind of see like all some of the individual parts. You could see how it could have become a great, like, the next generation's Ghostbusters. Like, you could almost, like, you know, with a much better script and like cast who like knew what sort of movie they were in, it might have become something. But as it is, it just kind of feels like a hodgepodge of like trying to recreate Ghostbusters and failing miserably, simply because it just isn't that funny, and a lot of the jokes just are like mostly bad. Some are just kind of middling, you know. That, like, there's probably one or two that got a slight smirk out of me, but you know, it's very you know, broken clock, you know, and all that.
Yeah, eventually you're gonna stumble into an okay joke just by virtue of you throwing so many out so rapid fire. Yeah,
pretty much. So anything else you want to say before we get into the spoilers?
Not really. I mean, I again, when I say it's a hard pass, I really just mean I didn't get anything out of watching this. I don't feel like I had a really fun time watching it. It kind of felt like an obligation of, well, I guess this is what we're doing today. I am 100% aware of the fact that this movie has lived and died off of its original marketing. Like, nobody is coming back to this because they're like, oh man, remember that? You know what it was? It's probably people coming back saying, hey, remember that movie that got really into Head and Shoulders? Like, that's the reason that people would be coming back. But yeah, no, it's just, it's very disjointed at parts as well. It's very haphazardly thrown together. In fact, going through this plot, I feel like we could hit the general arching plot beats, but if you told me any specific moment happened at any specific point in the movie, I'd believe you, because they can easily be swapped around to fit in anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was a little bit of a weird nostalgia watching it, but not in like a, oh, I like this kind of way. It was more just like, oh yeah, I remember this bad moment. Oh, now I remember this bad moment. It was kind of like that, but like, that's basically all it's got going for it. You know, it's not like the worst thing ever. It's not like, you know, it doesn't belong on extra reels. It's kind of thoroughly in this middle area of just not being good, not working, but you know, it's just kind of a shame more than anything else. So yeah, I suspect anyone who does go back to watch this now, if they don't just stumble onto it, it's probably people who remember seeing it when they were a kid. and think, oh, that seemed like it was all right when I was that age, and then they're going to watch it and go, oh no, I am mistaken, I was young and stupid, and now it is, I can see that it is extremely mediocre at best. So
now this was a vote winner. I'm curious how many of the people who voted for this are because they knew that it was mediocre and not great, or how many of them had that memory as a child of saying, oh yeah, I remember this one, and they wanted us to at least reintroduce them to whether or not it was good or bad.
I don't remember what the other options were, if I'm honest. I think
one of them, I think, was Resident Evil, or was that the
no, that was
Screams,
Screams. No.
That was Screams. Fair enough.
We wouldn't be doing that on AS. What are you talking about?
That's right. Sorry. I don't know. I just remember it being around and not good.
I want to say one of the options might have been The Fourth Kind, which is meant to be quite bad.
The Fourth Kind and Imposter were the other votes.
I know nothing about Imposter. Imposter might be a gem for all I know, but I don't know anything about it.
Well, we'll never do it now.
No, we will. What is this attitude? You sometimes it was like, oh, something lost the vote, so now it never happened. Like, no, it does. There's only so many sci-fi. We're going to get to all of them.
I'm just saying it's pushed way down the list. We don't get to it for another year now.
Sure. Although now that you've said that, I'm going to put it on every single vote until it wins, just to spite you.
We're doing a Criterion movie. Imposter is here as well.
Somehow, it's the wild card, regardless of the show. Yeah. All right. So let's just say spoilers. Let's get into it. For Evolution. The movie opens with the asteroid, and Seann William Scott's character, Wayne, is training to be a firefighter. So he's come out to like a little hut that's in the middle of the desert, and he's got like a sex doll.
I think it's a CPR dummy, but yes, it looks like that.
That's what it looks like. It's certainly the jokes they make after the fact are all in that vein. But he basically throws her in the little hut, he sets it on fire, and he's basically just training, like running in and getting her. And he's like acting out as he's doing it as well, where he's like saying, stay back everyone, this is serious. Oh, she's going to live. But the asteroid comes down, he sees it coming, he runs away, the car flips into the air. It's a whole big spectacle moment. Title screen, there you go. Onto the actual like two main characters that we're really going to be focusing on for most of the movie after that. So, remember how in Ghostbusters that Venkman worked at a university and he was with students? Remember that?
Strikes a familiar tone, possibly.
Yeah, so Mulder is a university professor, and he is handing out A's, like he's Oprah, handing out cars. He's like, you get an A, you get an A. Except the two dumb kids who are both brothers, who got a C, even though their paper, which he reads out because he remembers it because it was so, well, memorable, he reads out that they wrote that, oh, my uncle lives in a cell, and it's really boring because he only has a magazine to read. And I'm like, a C? They're in a science class and you gave them a C for that? That's like not even just an F. That's like, get out of my class. You clearly are not ready to be here.
So again, I think the idea of this is that they're saying how he's a wildly overqualified professor who has been shunted into this biology teaching job at a community college. They keep coming back to the community college aspect of it. So I feel like it's just him saying, I don't give a crap about any of this. You all get A's because, like, screw it. Like, who cares? It's community college.
That is not what the performance tells me, though, because he is very happy to interact with everyone. He seems to be in a pretty good mood, all things considered, during this scene.
Yeah, no, exactly. The performance doesn't say that, but that's the only thing I could think of why he would be doing this, unless he's just really that cool and laid back of a professor.
Yeah, and then we're introduced to Harry Block, played by Orlando Jones, who he's on the phone about something at first, but he comes out and one of his students, Nadine, this leggy blonde, is like sitting up on the counter, and she's like, "How's it looking, Professor?" And he's like, "It's tight, very tight, but not too tight. I mean, you extra credits, you can get out of this." And like,
wah, wah, wah.
It feels like this scene's supposed to develop to a point where she's going to at least suggest that she could do something to get those extra credits, something extracurricular perhaps. But the scene never actually goes that far because David Duchovny walks in and he like sort of like makes an eye and a little joke or whatever. And honestly, up until this point in the scene, I really thought, okay, Harry as a character is getting this attention, but he's resisting it because he's a grown-ass man, and that's how, because that's, even though he says tight, it doesn't feel like he was trying to make a joke when he said that. It felt like he was just kind of distracted and he was kind of like caught off guard, and he's giving genuine advice from that point on. But as soon as they're wrapping up this scene and he looks over at David Duchovny as he's like leaving, he looks down at her ass and gives him this eye like, hey, look at this ass. And I'm like, oh, so he is just a pervert. Oh, okay. Like, I thought there was going to be more to that, but no, he is just the creep. Okay, fine.
Yeah. Also, the scene where David Duchovny busts in, he, Orlando Jones gets up and he's like, oh, this is what it looks like. But all it looked like was that they were sitting there talking. Like, it wasn't like they were in a compromising position or anything like that. It looked like a teacher talking to a student. So I'm not really sure what the implication was when Duchovny came in and said, like, oh, are you ready to eat or have you already eaten? Wink, 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 wink.
I guess the idea is that he's been caught in situations before, or at least David Duchovny knows him well enough to know that something could happen from this.
Yeah.
So he's acting appropriately, but yeah, it just, again, feels a little bit mismatched where it's like, okay, you're telling me like two different things about this character at the same time, and they're not quite vibing together, and it's just kind of weird. But yeah, anyway, so it's like, hey, a meteor landed last night, let's go there for lunch and take some readings or something.
Apparently Orlando Jones is a internet assigned member of the U.S. Geological Society, so with this meteor coming down, he has to go out and check it out because we got to get him into the plot, guys. It just needs to happen.
I mean, I don't even think that he has to. I think it's just some, it's basically a club that he joined. And he's...
the U.S. Geological Society is actually like a government.
Oh no,
thing.
I know it's a thing, but the way he's a part of it is very much like he just signed up because it's a hobby, not because he's
he's a volunteer. He's not an actual official. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, let's go check this out, and he's like, hey, you come with me because you actually know science stuff. Which the movie does go on to explain as it goes that David Duchovny has a history with a more important job, and now he's here, so he knows much more about actual science than Harry does. So it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Also, Duchovny's character's name is Ira Kane, which I don't know if there's any meaning behind that, but it just sticks out to me as a... If
you take each of the letters in the name and shift them back 3 letters, I becomes F, and so on, and you loop it around, it's Fox. And Fox was the first name of Mulder's character in X-Files.
On the Fox network as well.
Yes. It's all connected.
It's all connected. Very good.
Or maybe they just picked a name. I don't know. Anyway,
so they go out to the site, and I feel normally when I'm discussing and I'm explaining, okay, let's set up the premise of the scenes we're about to talk about and whatever. Normally it feels like a worthwhile endeavor because I'm explaining how the movie progresses from one thing to the next, but because this movie is just a vehicle for the stupid jokes, I feel like I'm wasting my time even saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Because what this amounts to is the cops that are guarding this thing are really dumb, and all they have to say is literally, oh, we're here to do technical things. And it's like, oh, technical? They're doing technical things. Oh, well...
yes. We'll just go upstairs and leave you to it. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's just the second time they come back in. The first time is when they're down taking photographs and they're posing with the meteor. And, yeah, isn't that funny? I don't...
It's pretty much the same thing, yeah. And they just... It's a whole thing where they're basically just lying about being with the federal government, and the cops say, oh, okay. And... that's it. It's a joke in theory. They are doing something that has a humorous element to it, but it's not funny. There's nothing funny happening.
Well, to be fair, they don't go okay until they get scared by big words like science sample, and they're like, oh, that sounds serious. Yeah, you better do that. That's, yeah. They really portray these characters as just the dumbest possible people, unrealistically dumb. Even an idiot wouldn't just hear the word science samples and go, yeah, I should let you do that. But yeah, so they get samples, they take it back to the lab, and Duchovny's looking at it, and
it's a liquid that's being excreted rock as well. So they're like, oh, this meteor, it's bleeding. That's so weird. What's so special about this?
We're not going to go. Let's not do this beat for beat. It's going to take too long. It's boring. So
all right,
to sum up, right? there's single-celled organisms in the petri dish, but then when he brings Orlando Jones to go look at them, he's like, wait, those are multi-celled organisms. Oh, they're evolving. It's evolution. Oh, now they're turning into this. We have to take all my students out there for a field trip, so they go do that. They get more samples, but it turns out now there's worms. There's these flatworms around the rock. They're already evolved into life forms, and then it's like, they're splitting into two, so they're procreating even. Right, we can stop there. Yes. Anything you want to discuss in that section of the movie?
Yeah, a few things, because that's like 20 minutes. All right, so the first thing is when he brings back the petri dish, they are already splitting at that point, and that's what he's so wowed about, because you see, and I think it's a good actual effect they did here. He has the tiny little like dab under the microscope, and then as they're replicating, you see the little blue circle, because it's a blue liquid, expand to the point where it cracks the slide. So we get to see how rapidly they are reproducing immediately. So that was a good effect at the very minimum. The other thing is when he brings in Orlando Jones and says, hey, alien life, we just found this. This is where I feel was the most Ghostbusters. This is like the pinnacle of it. Because the idea is they just discovered this life beyond Earth, however you want to phrase that for whichever movie you're talking about. And their first idea is, how do we monetize it? How do we become rich and famous off of this? And their idea is they'll get the Nobel Prize and they'll go on all the science circles and there'll be these big famous scientists who discovered alien life. Whereas obviously Ghostbusters, it was, we discovered proof of the afterlife. Let's make an extermination business out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add. Meanwhile, as this is happening, Seann William Scott had a fighter exam to go do, but he's too tired from being up all night with the cops, so he fails miserably, and we find out that he works as a pool boy at a country club, and that becomes kind of a running plot until it kind of gets like drawn back into the plot when alien monsters start invading it.
It gets thrown away so quick. Like, I get the pool boy things because they need him to be at the country club, but it felt so out of nowhere. Because it doesn't result in anything. Also, this is where Seann William Scott has the first of many injure the dick jokes in this movie, where as he's doing his fireman's thing, he gets hit in the groin with a fire hose or something, and he's out of the test because he has to go nurse that.
Yeah,
and it's just the exact style of comedy.
I just want to point out here, so he gets hit in the nuts with the fire hose, right? Okay, yes, that would be painful. Cut to him holding a giant bag of ice over his trousers to try and nurse it back to health. Getting hit in the nuts is not like getting a bruise somewhere else. The ice is doing nothing, right? As someone with testicles, I'm telling you, this is doing nothing.
I would ask for verification on your credentials, but I'm not gonna. So we'll just continue on.
We can't do that on YouTube, David. No. Yeah, I'll start on OnlyFans.
Subscribe to Patreon, everybody.
So yeah, I mean, that stuff's going on. He's got a shitty boss, and the shitty boss ends up getting attacked by an alien monster eventually, but that's a little bit further down the line.
Yeah. One other thing they do in this part is they explicitly say that the aliens cannot survive in our atmosphere. They have to stay in their own nitrogen-rich atmosphere, because if they're exposed to oxygen, they basically choke out. There's
a little mist kind of forming where all the worms are when they find them. Which, by the way, so the sort of the blonde, the sultry blonde, Nadine, that was kind of maybe going to seduce Orlando Jones, she was in that scene, and because she was in this intro scene where we first met him, and then she was in that scene with the field trip, I thought, okay, that's a recurring character. We never see her again after that scene. She's just gone.
That's technically not true. In the very final scene, when Dan Aykroyd, we'll get to it, is handing out awards, she's standing in the back wearing the Miss Arizona sash. She did actually achieve her dream.
Oh, she did? Okay. All right. I stand somewhat corrected, although I think spiritually I'm still right.
No. Technically you're wrong. In every other aspect, you're spot on.
Yeah, she's not, like, I thought this is a recurring joke character. In the same way that the two dumb brothers ended up having, like, a small contribution to, like, saving the day at the end. Like, all the students would help, but it ended up just being two brothers. Everyone else didn't come with them. So, whatever. So, all this is going on. These aliens are splitting up into multiple life forms. Blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, we have to go back out there. We have to get more things. We're going to get Nobel Prizes, blah, 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 blah. But when they go back out there, the military is now swarming the place. There's like an entrance gate. You have to go through security. And they're trying to go through, and they're explaining that they're, scientists. They found this place, and the guy's not letting them. And David Duchovny's very calm and says, "Hey, get your superior officer. We should probably talk to him and talk this out." But then immediately, some soldier comes up and says, "Wait, you're Ira Kane, the Ira Kane." He's like, "Yeah." It's like, and he starts taking his gun out of his holster. He's like, "Do you mean my life? I'm living hell." And like, they just sort of start yelling for the other soldiers, "Hey, grab this guy, please stop him." And it all just turns out to be why he was fired from like the U.S. military research department or whatever faction he worked for.
Yeah, whatever science team they had going on there.
Because he knows Ted Levine's general character, used to work with him. And he acts all nice and buddy-buddy to begin with, but not for long.
Ted Levine is absolutely the Dickless of this movie. Like, there's no question. He's the exact same character.
David, remember when Dickless at the end of Ghostbusters got covered in foam? Remember that? Yeah, well, that's going to happen with shampoo at the end of this movie to someone. Guess who it is?
Oh, God, I can't even... There's so many options. It could be, I'm going to guess Ted Levine.
So it's like, okay, fine, right, you're setting this up. He's like, "Hey, we'll keep you in the loop, but you're not going to be a part of this anymore." And Julianne Moore makes her entrance and immediately trips. And even just this trip felt like, okay, not that this movie's been super serious up until this point or anything, but just a random pratfall does feel different to anything that's been here up until this point.
Yeah, everything else has had this sort of, I hesitate to say witty, but it's all based on the dialogue. Nothing has been like real physical comedy here. Even during the intro scene where Stifler's doing the rescue of the thing, it's more about his performance than it is the physical actions of it. This is the first time it's just and she goes all wide-eyed as she goes down. It feels out of place.
Attempted wit, one might say.
Yes.
So yeah, and we mentioned earlier they have this skeevy bit where they're sort of just talking about her stockings for whatever reason. And she gets up and she introduces herself. She works for the CDC. She's here to head up the science side of the military's base and whatever. And it's like, okay, fine. And they're not happy about it. They yell. David Duchovny moons his ass at the general as they're driving off. I'm like, okay, fine. And cut to a courtroom where they're at a hearing trying to get themselves reinstated back into working with this meteor and the alien life surrounding it.
2 weeks later, it's just all we've been operating under the assumption of days at this point, if not 2 days. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks have passed. And it's just okay, but don't worry about anything that happened in the in-between there with the rapidly evolving aliens.
Yeah, and there's so much about this that's just kind of weird to me. Forgetting the fact that this hearing would be happening this quickly or anything else, but just the idea that Julianne Moore's character, who is not a lawyer, does the questioning, the disposition of Duchovny on the stand, and brings up his past and what he made. Basically, he was trying to come up with a vaccine for anthrax, and it had a bunch of side effects, which included a lot of things. And this basically this gets their case thrown out, and next time we see them, they're walking defeated back in the halls of the college. And it feels like the only reason why Julianne Moore was the one to do this, because it felt weird that her character would be the one to do this. It seems like it's all just there so that Orlando Jones can turn around and say, "That was all foreplay, she wants you." And I'm like, wait, what? How?
Yeah.
In what context? I don't understand.
Yeah. If there's one aspect of this movie that I would just excise entirely, it's this romance, and that's a word I am very hesitant to use, between Duchovny and Julianne Moore, because it's just thrown in there for the sake of the movie had to have one. Whatever focus group they put it in front of, this had to happen, and it's so forced, it's so unnatural, but they do it anyway.
Do you know this really sad part is that I think that the scenes that's just them without Jones, it's not good, but it wouldn't be the worst ever. I think the way though that he kind of tries to make it happen by saying, "Hey, she wants you," or the later conversations where she's like, "Oh, she's in need of a good humping," or some of those later lines, or just the looks that he fires him when she acts a certain way. I'm like, this makes it like so much worse than it actually is. This is like, not it would be a romance that had no chemistry and didn't feel earned and all those other things anyway. But this makes it feel just especially egregious the way it's like being shoved in your face, like it's meant to be cute and funny. Like, hey, there's an attraction here. So very. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, so
no. I wholesaler. It just feels so unnatural. Honestly, if I had to cut any character, I thought when this movie started it was going to be Stifler. I thought that Wayne was going to be the character that's just the most excisable. And in a plot element, he kind of is. But the one that I would want to cut the most is Orlando Jones's character, because it feels like he doesn't have an actual real character arc. There's no real definition to his character to begin with. And it feels like every scene he's in, he's just kind of making it a little bit worse.
Yeah. So they basically, because they get back to their office and find out the army broke in, took all of their samples, took all of their research, and I laughed out loud when he said they took the JPEG files, because no one would say that, but
oh my god, they took my .txts. What am I gonna do?
You would just, if you were going to be specific, the most specific you would get is say photos. You would not specify the file type, but whatever. That's just a funny little relic of the Hollywood still learning computers.
I like to imagine that it is literally just like a screenshot of that he took of the animals that he just had as like his computer desktop background. And he's like, they wiped my background. This
reminds me actually of what might be my like least favorite joke in the whole movie. In the scene where they met the general for the first time, and his like henchman is Ty Burrell, and he's like standing there all cocky. They basically say, how did you even discover this? And he's like, oh, we have our ways. And he's like, oh wait, did you tap my phone? And he's like, oh, don't be ridiculous, we're not the KGB, we were monitoring your computer. And it cuts to Orlando Jones, and he walks off. He's like, wait, his computer? Those girls in those photographs were all over 18. And then Ty Burrell's like, oh, I'm sure, and smirks. And I'm like, this isn't funny. Nah. There's nothing humorous about this.
Again, I think that if they had really leaned into the idea that Orlando Jones's character is a horn dog, and they like played that up as his defining characteristic, this could have maybe worked, but
I think it just goes too far. Like, say if you just had, oh, we were monitoring your computer, and you cut to Jones, and he's like, well, what? And doesn't even say anything else. He just looks worried. It's like, our minds can sort of fill in and say, oh, he was looking at some weird porn, or he was looking at something, but not jump immediately to explaining, oh, they're not under 18, I promise they're not under, because that just makes it specific. And like, okay, maybe, even if they aren't, it feels like you're the sort of guy then that's getting as close as you possibly can, but being on the right side of the law. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. He's not a likable character. Like, it's nothing against the actor. I've seen him in other things where I do enjoy him, but like here, he's just every aspect of him. I just want him out of the scenes.
Yeah, it's how he's written. It's got nothing to do with Jones as a performer. So because they're pissed at this and like, well, we want to stay involved in this, and they have taken all of our research. How do we keep going? Well, we have to get more samples. Cut to them dressed as a general and a private, breaking in to the base to go and get their own samples. And because it's been a few weeks now because of the court case and all that, because that was a time jump, there's now like a big sort of like, not a building, but like a big sort of tent type structure around where the meteor is. It's like, they've got like an elevator they've built in now that goes down to it and all that. Like, they've really decked it all out in like science research facilities and whatnot. And it's like, okay, see if you got to this point a bit quicker, right? And you were sort of establishing this as the type of movie where our main characters, maybe give them better motivations other than just we want to get back at them, because that's kind of what this scene is. I can sort of see where, okay, this is how you could feel different to Ghostbusters and make it feel kind of unique, is that, okay, for some reason we can't trust the military with what they're doing. Maybe because they're going to do something bad with what they're going to find or something. And you can make us root for these like heroes who are breaking in at their own risk to do the right thing in some way. But it's not. And obviously we've spent so much time with these guys just being like professors at a community college that it's actually kind of weird to like watch them like suddenly like infiltrate a military base and pretend and just act like they belong. I don't know. It just feels a bit weird.
I think this could have just used a once over one more time, because what got me was the fact that they keep on saying that Duchovny is a biologist. He knows all this biology stuff, and they do lean on that. There are times where that comes into play. But they also specifically say that Orlando Jones is a geologist, and that's at least what he's teaching. And later on in the movie, they make the point of saying that this whole town, this whole area they're in, is built on old abandoned mine shafts and cave systems. So I feel like this could have been a good time to show that he knows what he's talking about by them getting into the cave via one of the other methods. Like, explore this cave system, set that up for the third act where it's going to be more important, and then you get to dodge this entire sequence of them having to pose as military people for no reason.
I think they wanted this, though, for a few reasons. I think they wanted it because maybe it leaves it open that those other access areas are being used by the creatures to get out. So we'll, that's something that's going to come up soon. I also think they really wanted they're wearing the hazmat suits that are in there, so they're naturally mic'd, so that Julianne Moore can hear their conversation when they're down there looking at stuff, because they're talking about her, and Orlando Jones is like saying, hey, she wants you, and Duchovny's like, nah, she's not got a sexual bone in her body, she's an ice queen, she has no feelings whatsoever. And he's like, nah, she just needs a good humping. Like, that's a conversation, and she hears all of this, right? And that's the comedy.
I mean, you could easily just have had it just say that the cavern is mic'd up at this point, and they're just having the conversation down in the cavern. Like, there's easy ways to go around this. I cannot for the life of me figure out why they needed to have him in the officer's uniform, except to point out that he was actually a military officer earlier on in his career. That's the only thing it seems to be doing, and it's not for a point of plot, it's for a point of character.
Yeah, so they go in though, and they see it's like got a whole ecosystem now. There's like various different types of life form. There's like small bugs, and then there's bigger bugs that eat the small bugs. It's all just like alien versions of these things, right? They see like a big crab thing that's got like a big ass head at the back, and that's kind of that's actually how they get onto Julianne Moore, because he's like, that reminds me of someone.
Yeah, it's like a 30-second long thing where the bug turns around, they see the big ass, and they're like, hey, look at that. Look how much junk in the trunk it has. Look at that big ass. Look at all that. And then eventually they transition over to Julianne Moore. I'm like, guys, this is 30 seconds of just riffing on a CGI bug ass. What are you doing?
So eventually, like, Julianne Moore and some of the others come down in hazmat suits and start debating with them, telling them to get out. But the main sort of ending to this scene, though, is that one of the flying bugs breaks in, like, cuts its way into Orlando Jones's suit, and goes up his ass. That's what we're doing here.
It actually starts off with the horrifying imagery that I thought was only present in The Mummy, which is you see the bug underneath the skin of his legs, moving up and down.
That comes later. That's when he's on the operating table.
No, but that's what I'm saying. He's on the operating table, and then it switches around and
but we're not there yet. We're like, the get up his ass already happened at that point, though.
It's okay, so they say that it's inside of him. I guess the implication is it goes in through his ass, but I was kind of under the implication that it went in just like cutting a hole in him, because it shows it has that knife beak thing.
I assume it went in his ass because they didn't talk about a wound, but like like it ends with him screaming, and then smash cut to him on a gurney being like taken into like one of their areas upstairs.
Yes,
and cue lots of jokes where they're I mean, look. There's one that got a minor chuckle out of me here, right? I got one minor chuckle, which is like the things under his skin and his leg, and like when you have to amputate, and he's like, what? No, don't amputate, don't take the leg. And then they say, oh, it's going for his testicles, and then he immediately starts screaming, take the leg. Mildly funny, okay?
You got one. Congratulations.
Mildly. But then it's like, oh no, it's crawling near his ass. I think we can get it through there. So they flip him over, and we've got David Duchovny and Julianne Moore sort of up at his head, sort of holding him down, and just basically just giving him pep talks as he's like lying there. And it's just all jokes where the doctor's like, oh, I'm going in, I'm going deeper, a little bit deeper. And Orlando
Jones... They make
the
joke of saying there's no time for lubricant. And he's like, there's always time for lubricant.
That's also mildly funny, okay? I'll give them those two lines. Take the leg and there's always time for lubricant are a little funny.
Yes.
But that's it. That's the extent of what I'm enjoying comedy-wise here. because it goes on too long. It's all just jokes about how deep they're getting into his ass and whatnot, and yeah, and it's all played for a joke at the end, of course, because when they're taking on the big alien life form, they're going in via its asshole, and he's like, "I've got a score to settle."
Yeah, I thought they would actually, like, just based off the humor of this, when they got to that scene, I thought they were just going to spell it out for the audience, like we were too stupid to recognize what was happening, but they had a little restraint. Not much, considering what was happening, but a little restraint.
Yeah, I also think he says something like, "How do you like it?" So, again, they do emphasize it enough where you'd at least get that they were doing something. So it's like, okay, why haven't they been arrested for breaking in? Well, it's because Julianne Moore just kind of likes them and is like, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, thanks for not calling the cops." And they kind of leave it in a fairly amicable place.
Yeah, though she did clear of, like, I heard you guys on the comm saying that I need a good humping, and you don't know me. You don't know where I've been.
Wait, that sounds like a weird thing. Like, you don't know where. It's like, usually that's what you say when you say someone might be kind of dirty. Like, oh, you don't know where they've been.
Well, she does that later, because they're at the, I think right at the beginning of the third act, she's like, "Look, there's something I need to tell you, David Duchovny. I would have rocked your world." And then he's like, "Okay."
Well, yeah, but that's different. That's just saying she's good at sex. That's different from saying,
"Oh, that's different. All
I've
right,
been
fair
around." Those are two different things.
Fair. I guess that's just how I was reading it. Yeah, so the other thing that happens here is we get more on getting Stifler, J. Michael Scott, back into the...
It's his boss at the golf course who gets eaten by an alien monster. He's getting lucky with another lady about his age. He's taken out to a green, because nothing more romantic than sex on the ninth hole.
Some sort of sex joke there about holes, I'm sure. Continue.
I wasn't trying to make one. I just...
No, I'm not putting in... I'm putting in as much mental energy as the writers to this did. Continue.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this just all builds up to when everyone tells back at the party where he was serving drinks, he does the whole, "Oh, that's terrible," but is like grinning like the entire time. So it's like, okay, fine, that's the joke.
Well, but, I mean, yes, but also in plot development, it is also showing that we already saw from one of Scott's earlier scenes that the aliens were out and about in the town. Because
I was getting to the plot stuff, because the plot stuff is more kind of stuff we don't see, because he shows up the next morning at the college when the guys are arriving back from like the ass like extraction, whatever you might call it. Yeah. And they arrive back and they see his beat up car and they recognize it, and it turns out he's waiting there with the dead creature that killed his boss. And so and to be fair, all we saw, the last time we saw him was just him smelling when he found out his boss was killed. But it turns out that off camera, they chased this creature around and it eventually dropped dead because they still can't breathe oxygen, right? They still, once they're out of their own atmosphere for long enough, they'll still drop dead. Obviously, anyone with any sense is thinking eventually they're not going to have to do that. Eventually they're going to be used to the atmosphere, and that's going to be bad news for us, kind of thing. But it's like, okay, so they take a look at this thing. It's much bigger. It's it's just like about the size of a big dog, I guess I'll call it. And it's like, okay, so this thing's pretty fierce. They're getting out somehow, and they've hurt someone. So this is becoming a problem. They're spreading. This isn't just like a curious little science thing anymore. This is actually something that's going to become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, where does Duchovny go before he meets up with them back at the diner? Does he go to see Julianne Moore? He does. He goes to the hotel where she's working.
It's the hotel. Honest to God, I thought I missed something at this segment because he's just sitting there waiting at her hotel. I don't remember there being a sequence where they shared this information, that it was made clear that she was expecting him, because it seems like she kind of was.
No, I don't think
it was a very out of place scene.
She wasn't expecting him. Like, she was surprised to see him, but it wasn't.
All right.
The idea is that he's waiting for her to come back here so he can try and tell her, hey, you need to warn the general. These things are spreading. They're getting dangerous. We need to do something about it. And she's like, look, I'll look into it. I think you're overreacting, but I'll talk to him. And at the end of the scene, David Duchovny just decides to say, hey, by the way, could you ever find me attractive? And then the elevator door shuts. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're progressing. And as he walks away, he's so confident about her reaction that he goes, yep, she's mine. And just walks off. And I'm like, oh, what? Okay.
Yep. I mean, I guess when you look like David Duchovny, you can just do these things, and it works out.
I mean, it's better than Anakin and Padme.
Hey, I have something I want to ask you. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Do you like sand?
How do you feel about fascism?
Yes. Would it be cool if I just killed a bunch of people? There was one interstitial scene here, which is kind of the rest of the plot setup of how we get going, is that one of the creatures, a small little mixture between like a dog and a seal looking thing, has made its way into a suburban home where there's like a book club or something going on. And then it ends up attacking a bunch of women there. And so now it's definitely known to the general public and seen up close.
Yeah, it's starting to get to people. It drops dead as well as the other ones. When they're at the diner, though, so they're kind of catching up, and this is where all that horrible dialogue about do you ever see the girls in the showers? He's like, oh, sometimes I shower with them, and I'm like, and he's like, oh, he's like all excited.
Yeah.
David Duchovny sits down, he's sort of catching them up, and then he turns to ask for the salt or something from the next table. And it's the cop, the dumb cop who's been at the meteor site a few times. But it's not just him. It's also Sarah Silverman, who it turns out was David Duchovny's ex-girlfriend in the movie, right? And he starts complaining because she starts complaining as well. He's like, hey, officer, I don't know about the law, but if someone like walks out with all your shirts, like, isn't that stealing? And he's critiquing that she stole a bunch of his shirts. And she gets so mad that she stands up and says, you want your shirt back? I'll give you your shirt right now. And she starts unbuttoning. And Orlando Jones and Stifler both sit there looking like, oh, Christmas. Yes. Right? And eventually the cop gets up and like says, no, like he'll let you borrow it for today, isn't that right, sir? And he just kind of shrugs and whatever. But I'm like, this was her one scene. Her one scene is to be this weird, crazy ex-girlfriend who threatens to strip because she's so mad.
Yeah, I even just ignoring that it's Sarah Silverman, it's someone who's actually somewhat of a name. Like, all right, let's just put it into context of the story. What does this accomplish? Is it character development? Is it plot? What is it doing?
It's nothing.
It's just there.
The only important thing in this scene is not her. The only important thing is that when the cop gets a call over the radio, Seann William Scott, presumably because he's been practicing the codes for his firefighter job that he wants, he recognizes the code and says, oh, that's an animal attack. That could be relevant. That's the only plot important thing that happens. And I feel like, okay, maybe, like, it felt like maybe there was like another part to the cops arc or something that was meant to come later. You know, maybe there was like an extra scene with him and her that was going to like be a little payoff in the third act or something. Like maybe the cops were going to help them like beat the aliens or something. Because it feels like you've given this guy like multiple scenes early on. You've given him this scene where he's dating David Duchovny's ex. It feels like later, and I know we see him like in a minute at the crime scene, but it felt like later on, maybe he would end up helping them in some way. Because there's a joke here as he's leaving where Sarah Silverman wants to make it sound like, oh, my boyfriend's job is important, so I'm going to say, be careful out there, as if like, you know, he's leaving. It's a life-threatening thing he's doing every day. I'm going to emasculate like this stupid college professor ex that I've got by saying just how manly my new boyfriend is. And on his way out the door, the cop turns around and says, hey, you've got the check, right? And she sort of gets sad and says yes. And I'm like, I hate this little moment so much because I actually think it's quite toxic, but not in the way that I think people initially assume that I think that. I think it's kind of toxic because this idea that like there's a problem that she's just paying for what seems like a cup of coffee. Like that's all of a sudden like, oh, he's clearly a deadbeat and a horrible boyfriend because he's having to rush off and she has to pay the $2 for his cup of coffee or whatever it is. Like it just seems like almost like the toxic masculine side of this, where it's like, oh, the men should always pay, and it's like a sin upon your manhood if you ever don't, or so. I don't know. It felt like a weird backwards little moment to me.
I get where you're coming with that, and I felt that same sort of moment too initially. I think sitting on it more, it's just kind of more supposed to be a thing of she is saying, you know, she's trying to basically show off how much better this guy is than Duchovny, and it's not as much of he's not paying the bill. It's just the fact of she's left with it. Like she now has to put the money down on the table, and it's kind of just this little thing of like, oh, he's not as constantly chivalrous. He's not going to just like have out the thing.
I think my problem with it is that nothing in the scene suggests that he can't or wouldn't be willing to pay. It's just that he's called away and he just remembers it going out the door and says, "Oh, remember and pay, honey." If you're in a relationship, there's nothing. Like, who cares which one of you pays?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Yeah, like it really does not.
You're right.
I don't know. It's one of those like little dated things that just stuck out to me and really annoyed me.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I mean, that's most of the movie to me.
To be fair, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so David Duchovny seems like a better guy because he would pay for breakfast. Is that is that what the point we're making here?
Again, this scene just makes no sense to me because the one line Orlando Jones has in relevance to all this is, "It's amazing how many women just take off their shirts for him," implying that David Duchovny is this player or is able to land whatever women he wants, but that's not part of his character. That's not something that we deal with.
There is nothing in the rest of the movie that shows that. Yes, he obviously ends up with Julianne Moore, but like that doesn't feel like, I don't know.
No, that feels like it's built up. That's not something where she's just throwing him, or even like that was the thing where she's the one girl who's able to resist his charms. Like, it's not part of his character, his love life, and any past thing with that. It feels like, honestly, a drop subplot that had to be here because that's the only way they could bridge the animal attack and get them to the location.
I even wonder if there was a bunch of deleted scenes that were shot, that were cut out, connected to some of this stuff.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I'm sure the old DVD back in the day had deleted scenes. I mean, I don't know if I ever saw them, if I even had the DVD. I don't remember, but... I do wonder.
I mean, I saw it. It was sitting at Blockbuster. I could have checked for years.
It existed, yes.
Yep.
And they're probably on YouTube, honestly. I'm not going to watch them, obviously, because I don't want audio playing, but Evolution deleted scenes. Let's see if anything comes up. Yep, there's 5 minutes of deleted scenes on YouTube.
All right. Well, I don't know if 5 minutes would be able to fix everything, but it's something.
Probably not, would be my guess. So anyway, they go to this house where this attack happened, where the woman got her hand bit, and the cop this time tries to kind of man up and be like, "Look, I'm not falling for it this time. I'm not letting you in." But then they say, "Wait, did you touch it with your hand? Oh, you shouldn't have done that. You touched it with your hands. Have you seen Prometheus? That's a bad idea." And he's like, "All right, fine, go on." And then they go and have a look at the creature. To be honest, though, the more important part is that Seann William Scott comes running in. And one of the running jokes that was established when he first showed up at the college is he keeps trying to sound smart. So he says things that, like, he's like, "Oh, I was doing a perimeter check and I found something." And he does like a little wink as he says it, as if like, "No, I was actually snooping." And I'm like, yeah, but that's still kind of the same thing. Whatever. Anyway, so he found something. They go out back, and down behind this suburban area is the desert. And down the hill, there's a bunch of these alien creatures that are all just dying. They're all just gasping and dropping dead.
All right. I from the point of the scene, I understand, like, oh, we were here for the initial thing. Here's a secondary thing we found. I understand what we're doing. From a realistic, logical perspective here, this is a suburban neighborhood. This is in people's backyards. Are you telling me that there are at least 30 of these giant dragon creatures managed to come into this area, all start asphyxiating, and nobody noticed this?
What would you want from me? I don't have it.
I want an answer, Pete. I want
don't have
anything.
an answer.
I want a tiny little bit of anything.
It happened very quickly.
Oh, okay. So no one, the dragons all managed to come. And that's the other bit, is that this is the point where Orlando Jones finally doubles down and he says, like, oh, they must have been coming from the caves. There's an entrance to whatever, like half a mile down that way. So all I could think is these dragons flew out of a cave half a mile and then all proceeded to choke out and die in this location, and nobody noticed.
I mean, nobody noticed, and I can't in any way help you with that. I would suggest, though, that the idea that they got this far, same with the creature in the cupboard, the one that bit the woman, is the idea is that they're getting a bit more resistant, so they're surviving longer in oxygen before they die, and this is how far they've gotten. So I will at least defend that one element of it a little bit, but
all right,
that's all.
Because they do specifically show one of them who manages to get back up. He deposits an egg sac, which immediately cracks open, with one that is able to be oxygen tolerant, and that's where the next set piece is.
Probably the biggest set piece of the movie, honestly, is this flying alien bird creature that flies away and goes to a shopping mall, basically, and starts terrorizing everyone. And our three lead characters get in the truck, drive to the mall, and this is the part that got me, is that it just cuts to them breaking open glass and taking out shotguns. And I went, wait, is everyone abandoned the mall? But the thing is, though, when they're chasing the alien and all the scenes that come after, there's people that are just still going around shopping as if nothing, until the alien actually came to that part of the building, no one was aware anything happened. So I'm like, and what justification did they have of just breaking into the gun store?
All right, so to composite this, what I think was happening here is that you see people running out the front of the mall. So clearly, some people at one side of the mall are aware that something is happening. There are people still shopping, but it's not all of everybody yet. I think that they went into a gun shop that is at the beginning of this mall, somewhere near the entrance. They busted it open, they got the supplies they needed, and then they went about through the rest of the mall.
Okay.
It's not better. It doesn't like fix it, and it leads to that line of Orlando Jones.
Yeah, that horrible line of dialogue. Because obviously there's context where this makes sense. You're in like a zombie apocalypse, society's completely falling apart, we just break in and take what we need. But it felt like they've just arrived and they just see some people running and they're immediately just breaking windows open to get weapons. And I'm like, I just feel like even just an acknowledgement for the characters that they're doing something kind of dodgy here, but they've got a good reason, would be something, but they're just doing it. And then all of the lines of dialogue they have, whilst they're holding guns and trying to look cool, where they've got them over their shoulders, or they're doing whatever, or they're, and then that horrible line we mentioned from Jones. But all of these bits, they're chasing the alien through the thing, they can't quite find it, it's somehow hiding, and Seann William Scott keeps doing the caca, caca, toki toki, caca.
Yeah, he thinks it's a bird, and so he's trying to do bird noises, and they keep saying, "You're stupid. That's not a thing. Stop doing that."
And then they run down the mall, they find a microphone for some busker or whoever was there before, and he starts doing it into the mic. And then the jokes become that both of the other characters want to shoot him because he's annoying them. To the point where it's like, okay, we've established this isn't working. He's like, oh, good point. I won't do it anymore. And then he starts singing.
I hate this scene so much.
He starts singing. And then they both want to shoot him some more. Orlando Jones is like ready to do it. He's got the shotgun primed. And then they hear the monster and they're like, oh, it's working. Keep singing. So he keeps singing more intensely now. He's doing like hip movements and everything.
Yeah, he's singing "You Are So Beautiful to Me." I don't know who the artist is, but all right, so it works. All right, it works. It gets a response from the dinosaur, dragon, alien, whatever you want to call it. It's responding to his singing, and it turns back around and starts flying towards them in order to get to the source of it. Question: why the hell did this work? What in any setup of anything else did he think singing was going to attract this? Because this is the epitome of what I think is a deleted scene or a deleted subplot, where there was some reason to believe that singing a certain song, or maybe this song specifically, would make it react. I'm flashing back to the scene with the pink ooze from Ghostbusters 2, and playing that upbeat music makes it react. There was setup for that. They were running experiments on it, and they discovered that this worked. This comes out of nowhere, and it just happens to function.
Is it possible that maybe, and I'm not saying it's in the movie because it's not, but is it possible at some point the idea early on at the party at the country club, the idea was the music attracted the creature towards the party, and there's something to be said that maybe they were going to try and set up something with that, but they just didn't. It's just kind of, missing.
Sure. Yeah, that's entirely possible at some point in someone's mind, but it was never put to paper.
My headcanon, on the other hand, is simply that the alien wants to kill Seann William Scott as much as the other two do, so that's why he comes back.
I'll accept that if they just played it up a little bit more. If they made him an awful singer, but he's competent, he's okay, not great, but he's there. If they made him really pitchy and voice cracky, then I could be like, okay, he's awful enough that even the alien wants to take him out.
Yeah. Also, he's carrying a shoplifter. He's got a hostage because there was a scene of a shoplifter putting on layers of clothes in the dressing room, and the alien for some reason is banging on the door, like specifically wanting her. And to be fair, now I'm thinking about it, I think she was singing in that scene when she was putting on the clothes.
You're right, she was.
I think they actually they kind of set it up.
I don't think but they set it up in a way that is the most like not visible at all. You know, like to an audience member watching that through, you're not picking up on that.
But what I'm getting at though is that maybe there's some truth to what I was saying, and that there was this idea that has been like cut out enough that it's not really noticeable. But now that we're thinking about it, there's kind of some evidence there in hindsight. Oh, it went to her and she was singing in that scene. So on some level, it's attracted to singing.
All right. Fair. I mean, I would have been much more interested to see that actually happen.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it justifies it. I'm just saying that somehow that tracks. So here we are.
All right.
So yeah, Jones jumps and grabs her. Duchovny shoots the alien, and it wakes up for a second, and they all fire into it and put the guns over their shoulders like they're badasses. And then, for no reason other than to show how victorious they feel, it cuts to them singing in the car to play that funky music, White Boy. I don't know if that's the title of the song, but that's the lyric.
Yeah.
And they're bopping their heads. They're all singing. They feel great. And then the scene just cuts away at the end, and I'm like, they just wanted to show us how accomplished they feel. They're in a good mood because they took down the alien.
But you see, they also now get to play that funky music to the soundtrack, and that really needed an upbeat one to add on there.
Very true, very true. So at this point, Governor Dan Aykroyd shows up to the military base at the research site, and they're showing him that these things keep spreading. Now the newspapers are, in on it because they're getting these reports from these like civilians.
Yeah, the mall essentially made it a super public event.
And he's like, hey, in 2 months, the entire US will be alien territory and we'll all be extinct. Which, that line stuck out to me. In 2 months, the entire US will be theirs and we'll be extinct. And I thought, actually, more countries on the planet. Humans will still be around for at least a little while.
Look, I'm pretty American, and I'm pretty sure America is the world.
Oh, is that right?
Nothing else is around it. They show the map of the expansion of the aliens, and it just so happens to stop, like, because it's a fuzzy line. It's not like it's a very clear line. It's a fuzzy line. Is how it described. The fuzzy line stops right at the Mexican border and right at the Canadian border. Like, the aliens aren't going to bother going in those directions. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, maybe they just know that Canada's full of nice people. They know that Mexico's been...
Okay, well, basis of the movie, apparently the aliens catalytically do seek out warmth, which is why in Arizona it's a big problem. So theoretically going up north would be detrimental to it. I don't understand why they wouldn't go into Mexico then, but there's a reason why they wouldn't go to colder climates.
That wall is just really going to stop them.
Yeah. God, it's so effective. Such a solidly built wall.
Anyway, so our main characters storm in. How they get past the front gate is anyone's guess, but they storm into the room so they can make their big entrance, say, admit it, you're happy to see us, and they explain that they just killed an alien at the mall and that they're blah, 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 blah. They all start yelling over each other. But the big thing here is that while this is going on, is that there's like a bit of a hubbub downstairs where the meteor is. It seems like the aliens have evolved already, because I mean, the entire premise of this movie is that they start off as single-cell organisms and they evolve so quickly. They emphasize that early on quite a bit, that that first like little day that David Duchovny talks about is like 200 million years of Earth evolution happening in the span of like 12 hours. So that's how quickly it's going. They've evolved into primates. There's like weird kind of blue ape creatures now that are kind of down there.
And like they're intelligent enough to be taking out the cameras that they had installed down there. So they've got a rudimentary intelligence to them.
It does make you wonder though, like, okay, what would they evolve into once they're past like humans? Because they're going to keep going past what we're at.
Yeah. Luckily, the movie does not have to deal with that.
No, the movie has no interest in doing that. So we get a whole scene where, because some of these apes come up and attack them and they have to have a bit of a fight scene shooting at them, it convinces Dan Aykroyd to give the general whatever he wants. Yes, use as much napalm as you want. Go fire them all out. And it's like, okay, fine. And Duchovny and Co are like, hey, that's maybe a bit hasty. We don't really know how they'll react to certain things. Maybe that's a bad idea to just assume that we can. In fact, another slight little joke I did like, very small one, is when the general says, oh, we're going to, like, get rid of all the aliens. And he's like, how do you do that? It's like, with napalm, lots of napalm. And then one of the good characters says, why don't you just nuke them while you're at it? And there's a moment where Ty Burrell just leans in and goes, yes, sir, what about nukes? I actually did get a little chuckle out of that.
Yeah.
I got a little chuckle out of it.
It's okay. It's fine. It's just, by this point in the movie, we're approaching the third act. We're a good hour 15 in. I'm just waiting for it to end. I haven't been having fun. I'm just kind of like, all right, do the third act, get it over with. I don't care at this point.
So,
but that being said, Julianne Moore does get quote unquote fired at this point because she talks back to the general.
No, she doesn't get fired. She quits.
Oh, is that what happens?
Yeah, she chooses to leave.
It seems pretty mutual, though.
She comes out with like some cases and she's like, oh, can I come with you guys? I got all your research. Let's go use that. And then there's a joke here where she falls into Seann William Scott's lap. Like her head falls into his lap and he's like, whoa, well, this is awkward and weird. And she looks up and he's like smelling down at her and she's like, I'm kind of with him. And I'm like, are you? I guess you flirted a little bit with David Duchovny. It feels a bit, I don't know, I guess it's just drawing a line in the sand and saying it's not happening with you, regardless of my stupidity of falling into your lap.
Yeah, that was the one line where I was like, okay, I guess that just happened then. Like, you're just saying that that's where the romance is. And I kind of appreciate the fourth wall break of it, where she just is like, despite the fact we haven't actually done anything and we're not like serious, like she's aware that she's in a romance plot with this guy.
Yes.
And she's just like, yeah, I'm just there. But it again, from a character standpoint, it means nothing because I don't care about the romance.
Yeah, so basically they're hanging out back at the lab. There's a lot of college parties going on because like monsters have shown up and they're all doing like doomsday parties and whatnot. And basically, because for no other reason than to advance the plot, Orlando Jones starts smoking. And they point out that he doesn't do that, but he's like, hey, world's going to end, who cares? And he throws the match into the petri dish with the sample in it. And it makes the alien organism like go more, it sort of de-evolves into like a really simple single cell thing again, but it spreads really quick, like all up and down the wall. And they're like, oh no, fire makes this thing grow. They're about to napalm it. That's like that's the opposite of what we want to happen. This is going to make it stronger. What do we do? And then the entire pivot of the third act to like, okay, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. Is the two dumb brothers come in with beers for everyone. And David Duchovny looks at the periodic table on the back of the t-shirt that Julianne Moore's wearing. And I'm going to call out the science here as being bullshit, which I know sounds like a ludicrous thing to say at this point, but he basically just says, well, we're carbon based, and if we just go down and to the left, we get to arson, and that's really bad for us. So if we make arsenic, sorry. If we just go down and across the exact same move, as if we're on a chessboard, and that's how the periodic table works. Oh, we get to, was it selene?
Selenium.
Selenium, thank you. So maybe that'll have the effect on them that, it'll kill them, it'll be poisonous to them. And they're like, sounds like a plan. And then immediately the two dumb brothers are like, you can get that in Head and Shoulders because that's the key ingredient. For look at the shiny hair I've got. Isn't my hair great? Head and Shoulders.
All right. Pete.
Yes.
I'm gonna rewind. And I'm going to go back to Orlando Jones smoking.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to go back to the Petri dish even, because let's just list off. This is all one scene. This is all just one sequence that is required to get us into the third act. This is the necessary pivot point where they come up with a plan. They realize that the general's plan is garbage, and all of this has to happen here. One, this Petri dish is still filled with theoretically multi-celled organisms, but not like walking big ones or anything like that. They don't specifically say why it's not fully evolved, but they say that they keep it refrigerated, which says, okay, it's cold, and that's why it's not doing it. And then, I don't care how end of the world it is, why in the ever-loving hell did Orlando Jones throw a lit match into the only petri dish of this sample that they have.
Yeah.
That's just insanity in its own right.
Yeah, because, I think it's supposed to be an accident that he lands it there, but it's like, where was he aiming for? Why was he throwing a lit match anywhere? It's lit match.
Absolutely insane. Then it catalyst, it turns into a big thing. I'm willing to accept that in the sense of, if it's forcing a quick evolution, then it's just going to expand. It's not going to do anything of like tailoring to the environment, because requires a bit more time to do. I'm okay with that. We then pivot over to, I don't know why, she's wearing a t-shirt with the periodic table of elements on the back. But God bless her that she had it.
The vibe I got from this, do you know what this felt like to me? It felt like one of those scenes in a movie where for some reason her clothes that she was wearing in the previous part of the movie got destroyed. And this is like a shirt that's just like from the college. Because they work in the science lab. Hey, we've got some science shirts that are hanging about. And she's put one of them on. Except nothing happened to her in the previous scenes that would necessitate a change of clothes. She didn't get covered in something or anything like that. So I don't know why, but...
And then David Duchovny has the balls, the cojones, to look at this shirt and have the savant moment where he's like, hold on, I'm noticing patterns. And he points out what you said. And I'm going to tell you the craziest thing right here, Pete. What he said is technically a thing. There is actually a Knight's Move rule with the periodic tables over on the right-hand side where similar elements have similar things a Knight's Move away. It's not unheard of. However, the very fact that that's not explained to the audience makes it seem like he is pulling this out of his ass. Where he's just like, yes, if you just go here, then magic. You can just pull random stuff out. All of that is garbage. I hate all of that. But then the little punctuation mark, the little chef's kiss, is the two idiot brothers who then turn this into okay, we've given up on trying to be subtle. And that is where they just say, oh yeah, Head and Shoulders, it has solid sulfates. Haven't you noticed our hair is non-flaky and nice and shiny? And it's like, I am so angry at the movie with this point because it just feels like everything that's happened in just 1 minute of this movie has been essentially a parody. It feels like I'm watching like Scary Movie 14 or something here. It's the worst writing I could possibly imagine for a sequence.
Yeah, there is one small, tiny good line from Duchovny. When they bring up the ingredient in the Head and Shoulders, he turns and goes, "How do you know that? You don't know anything." I did like that line.
Yeah. I mean, my little thing is when the scene ends, as he's walking out, he turns to his brother and says, "You two just got A's," and they go, "Yeah." That's I was just appreciative that they had that little moment of redemption, but it's only because I was happy the scene was ending as well.
Yeah, so I don't think it is though, is like the whole Head and Shoulders thing comes up because they're talking about needing this element and like where do we get 5? Because that's the other thing, is like how much do we need? And David Duchovny just kind of shrugs and goes 500 gallons. And I'm like, you just pulled that number from your ass. There is you've not done any like thinking or math to like justify why you need that much. But that's how much you said. And they go, well, wait a minute, it's 2 a.m. Where are we going to get 500 gallons of that? And then the two brothers bring up the Head and Shoulders. And I still have to question, how many bottles of Head and Shoulders would you have to get 500 gallons? And even then, is 500 gallons of Head and Shoulders 500 gallons of that specific part of it? Because it's mixed in with other stuff, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why he was like scaling up, because it seems like a lot of gallons. So like maybe he was scaling up higher to just say only.
No, because he said 500 before they talked about Head and Shoulders. The 500 was just the estimate of how much they need.
You're right.
That was before we brought the shampoo into it.
God, I hate this entire sequence. It's so dumb. No, you're right. You're right. I'm trying to do some back of the napkin math here with the lethal dose from humans of arsenic.
Yes,
is 150 milligrams per kilogram of human. There's no good way to get milligrams over to gallons. One's a thing of volume, the other is a thing of weight. So I don't have a good transition there.
Don't worry about that. Just worry about percentage, right? That was what, 15% we just said?
Selenium in head and shoulders. God, I hate
No, David. I'm not asking that. I'm saying, of what you just said, the ratio of arsenic to whatever, the percentage to the kilogram.
Okay, I got you. 150 milligrams to kilograms. It looks like that's a factor of... God, that's like 10,000 times smaller. So it's like 0.01%.
It's like 0.01%, right?
Yeah.
So you need a lot of it to kill a human then. I mean, obviously, obviously a human's more than 1 kilogram, but like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not, it's not going to add up that much.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm just saying, if you can assume that the 0.1% ratio is the same for the volume, let's say, of the gallons to the aliens, this is probably overkill. That said, luckily the aliens do get a lot bigger before they use it, so it's a good job they brought all that head and shoulders.
It's sure, why not? Everything from this scene on, I'm waiting for the end, because I look at the search bar, I see there's only 20 minutes left in the movie. I recognize that we have the plan. It's a stupid ass plan that has no reason for them to think that it's going to work, but it's a plan. And we have the thing that's going to, because I was fully expecting, again, Ghostbusters. Dickless needs to open up the trap and let the ghosts go free.
Yes.
Like, we need to have that moment where everything gets significantly worse and then the heroes come in and save the day.
Yeah, because the heroes go in, Seann Scott steals a fire truck to use as the delivery device, which, to be fair, makes sense. It's a liquid, sure, right? Fire hose makes sense, right? So they drive that in, they take the hose down into the caves, and they're about to start dealing with it. The Blue Apes show up, but this is when the military are ready to start blowing everything up. They go a little bit early, taking them off guard. The governor's there to watch it as well, and stuff starts happening. So they have to run out for their lives. They escape, and
which, to be clear, it's the napalm going off as a catalyst, but instead of evolving the things that already exist, it basically hits the meteor and makes it so it's just a giant single-celled organism again. So that way we don't have to deal with what's the evolution of primates, or there would be a bunch of creatures running around. It's just one creature that crushes the rest of them, so we only have to focus on a single target.
Which they kind of made sense out of, I think, a little bit. They basically said that, it's like, if it's a battle of evolution or the species, then the most simple organism survives. So now it's just a really, really big single-cell organism and obviously then it's going to split into two, like the worm's dead, and it's going to keep doing. And presumably that matches up with the Petri dish earlier as well, so whatever, fine. Yeah. But it's like, okay, it's huge now, it's crushing soldiers, they're all freaking out, and it's like, hey, so the plan's still the same, right? We're still just going to put some head and shoulders in it. And they're like, yeah, let's go find an entry point. They drive under it in the truck. They see a big anus. They're like, all right, here we go. Orlando Jones is like,
they know it's an anus because it's a very, very loud fart joke.
They do a fart joke. Yeah. I happily forgot about that, David. I really didn't want to remember the bad fart joke.
No, if it's in my head, it's in all of yours too.
They do a bad fart joke, and they all react because the smell's so bad. And they shoot the head and shoulders up at Seann. Jones gets sucked up briefly at one point, and Duchovny has to pull him down just for a bit of extra comedy, I guess. And then
whatever counts as comedy.
They drive away because they realize this thing's going to blow up, because this in its system is making it balloon. It's going to pop, and sure enough, it explodes. And would you believe it, Dickless gets covered in shampoo and whatever other matter made up the alien.
Yeah, the green goop from the alien. And this is also where we get they get off the fire truck once they're safe, and Julianne Moore and Duchovny start making out because, they finished their arc. They did it.
Well, not quite, because the mayor, or the governor, sorry, is giving them all the accolades. He's like, hey, Seann Scott, I spoke to the chief. You're a firefighter now. And he's like, oh, thank you. And Julianne Moore leans over to Duchovny, because Duchovny, they're kind of implying here that his character the whole time has been like seeking the credit that he deserves for the scientist that he is. Mm-hmm. And she's like, yo, you wouldn't miss this for anything, would you? Indicating, hey, let's go have sex instead. So the movie ends with them sneaking off to the fire truck, and it just ends there with them. Aside, of course, the Head and Shoulders commercial they give us afterwards.
Yeah, the governor goes to give them the award. He realizes they're not there, and Orlando Jones makes a call back to the vaccine thing before, because apparently the soldiers called it cane madness whenever they got the side effects. So he says to the governor, "Oh, he's giving her a little bit of cane madness," and the governor goes like, "Huh, huh," even though he has no context for what that means.
Also, it's not funny. It's the like
No.
cane madness meaning like giving her sex is not. It's forced. It does not work.
Yep. And then, yeah, it just wholesale goes into a, boy, fighting aliens sure is hard. We make it a little easier by controlling our dandruff with Head and Shoulders. And it's... What? Why are we doing this?
The only thing that is slightly amusing about it is that one of them holds the bottle up back to front, which I'm not sure if it was intentional, but either way, I did kind of notice that and thought, okay, either that's supposed to be poking fun at the advert, or it's just, I don't know, sloppy. Either way. It's
just an honest mistake. Apparently, that sequence, that little tack on in the end, was actually Jason Reitman's idea. He was on the set, and he thought it'd be funny, and so they filmed it, and I guess it got put in. I don't know how old Jason Reitman was at this point, but...
also, it's Reitman, not Reitman.
Sorry, my bad.
It just sounds a bit dodgy. That's why I'm correcting it.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, no, I think that's if that's the first thing he ever did in cinema, which I'm not sure if it was, but damn, what a sad start.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I just felt a little defeated by the end. Like it's just kind of sadly underwhelming and unfunny throughout. I think is like ultimately what I would say. Yeah,
I'd agree. I was, once I clued in, once I realized that we were just doing Ghostbusters again, and I'd say that happened right around the reveal of Multicellular Life, when they were not talking about like, oh, this is an amazing discovery, it'll change the world. They were talking about how do we get rich. I was like, okay, we're doing the Ghostbusters thing. And then I started looking out for those parallels. I started looking out to see where it was matching up. And at every single time it did, it was so much lesser. It was so much not up to par of what the original Ghostbusters was. And it just, if they were going to make that comparison, or if they were going to do something along the same lines, they neither needed to be up to that par or doing something wildly different enough that it didn't feel right to make those comparisons. But instead, it's doing it, and it's doing it poorly.
Well, I think the logic probably was that because, like, as much as they talk about money, the movie doesn't then become about them, like, finding a way to profit from it, right? It's not like they start a business like Ghostbusters. Obviously, there's this general idea of they want credit, so they'll maybe get awards and money for it, but it's kind of like, it's kind of vague. It's kind of like, okay, this will lead to maybe some success, but there's no like direct thing. Whereas in Ghostbusters, it's no, we're starting a business, it's a service, like the firefighters or the police, they're going to call us to go bust some ghosts, and it's the whole thing. I think they thought that because they weren't doing that, which to be fair is the central part of Ghostbusters, but they've kept all these other elements around it. I think they thought, oh, that's the big difference we need, and it doesn't matter how much anything else lines up. But to be honest, it just feels like a big, like, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? It feels like I sometimes call this a damp squib, but I don't know if anyone else gets what I mean by that, which is just
a wet fart.
A wet fart. It's hollow. It's lacking the substance of what made Ghostbusters Ghostbusters. And then on top of that, the comedy is 99 times out of 100 just kind of unfunny at best, and actively like you know, repulsive at worst.
Yeah, just that sort of thing where for the time, for the early 2000s, it was kind of everywhere. But looking back on it now, you kind of wonder, why did we do that? Why did we spend 4 to 5 years where that was just all of the movies?
Yeah, I don't know, but it kind of sucks. It's not, again, it's not the worst thing ever. Like, there's definitely worse movies. I don't think it's quite belongs on extra reels, but as far as like a movie we would do on this show, it's definitely a very middle of the road type thing. So
yeah, I mean, I could see, again, I can see people having a nostalgia for it simply because of the amount of like marketing push it had, and it does, of the era, have a humor to it. So if you were into that kind of movie, I think you might have had an attraction to this. But I think if you look back on it with modern lenses, it's not going to stand up. There's nothing in it that feels like it's there anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 2001 is a pretty rough year for movies, and it was right at that age for me because I was like 12, where I was like, oh, I'm starting to go to the movies more on my own, without adults and stuff. I'm kind of right at that age. And I think back to 2001, and I'm just looking at a list here, and I'm like, oh, obviously there's some great movies from 2001 as well. I've got some favorites from that year, but they're mostly things that I saw later. When I look at the things that I was actually seeing in theaters, it was Evolution, it was Jurassic Park 3, it was Tomb Raider, it was,
Jeez.
I don't think I saw Shrek in theaters, but Shrek came out that year, Mummy Returns.
So one good one.
I mean, it's better than those other movies I mentioned, I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Right?
I just know you hate your Shrek.
I'm pretty sure I saw Rush Hour 2 in theaters. Very relevant, American Pie 2 was out in 2001. So there's a very specific window of time here with just this sort of kind of lame humor was just the thing for a while.
Yeah. I literally just watched the most recent season of The Righteous Gemstones on Max. Has Seann William Scott in a recurring role. So I know it's not him, but I kind of attribute this entire period of time to him. I feel like whenever I think about this style of humor, it's his face I see. He's the one that I put it in there.
Yeah, I don't think that's his fault, though. I think he just happened to play Stifler, and I think he got typecast a lot for a few years. And not that I think he's like an amazing actor necessarily outside of that, but I suspect he's better than just doing the Stifler role.
Oh, yeah. No, he was great in Righteous Gemstones. Again, that was the most recent thing. But I attribute this entire period to him. It's always that face I see.
Yeah. That's fair. Oh, geez, 2001 had a lot of shit movies. I'm just looking at all these and I'm like, oh, God.
Let's just do an entire year of extra reels where it's just everything from 2001.
First Fast and the Furious, Shallow Hal.
Oh, God.
Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. Oh, God. 2001 is a minefield of just depravity.
Yeah, I think that the cinematic stuff is probably the worst thing to happen in 2001. I can't think of anything that would possibly be worse than
that. Hey, it's close on a couple of them.
Yeah.
What is your final rating for Evolution?
It's very bland. It's very forgettable. I think that it does more wrong than it does good. So I don't think I can even breach the 5 on that, but it's also not, extra reels territory, as we've said. So I think I'm probably going to settle down at like a 4. I think that's kind of where I'm coming at it with this. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's definitely not something I would suggest checking out.
Yeah, that seems a bit fair. I think I feel like I'm leaning slightly higher, and I don't know if it is just because there was a small bit of weird nostalgia having seen it at the time. So I think I'm going to go with a 5 out of 10. But to be fair, that's what I've been saying all review. It is a mid movie in every conceivable way. It really is. So there you go, 5 out of 10, and that is our review somehow of Evolution. So there'll be no Atomic Cinema Experiment next week, but it's not exactly a gap week either. What's going to happen next week is that Mission Impossible season's wrapping up on Collector's Cut, and to get that review out a bit earlier, that's actually taking the Tuesday slot of the week on the YouTube channel. So on Tuesday, the new Collector's Cut will go out. There'll be no Ace next week. However, to make up for it, the following week, there'll be 2 episodes of the Ace. There'll be one on both the Tuesday and the Saturday. So, things are getting a little bit weird, but we think it's worth doing to get the new movie out as quickly as possible on the other show. So that's what's happening. So there you go. Straightforward. I also said earlier, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can support the show, help keep it coming, as well as all the other movie shows like Collector's Cut, Late Screams After Midnight. You get bonus content, including Extra Reels and Criterion Cut, which are 2 monthly shows we do over on Patreon. You can also get access to those by supporting us via YouTube membership if that's more your thing. Any support from any direction is greatly appreciated. Patreon's a little cheaper to get everything, but whatever you want to do is obviously greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. And of course, before we completely wrap up here, every episode of the Ace, David's got a homework movie, and he is
yes,
assuming he's trying to be ready for something. I think I can guess what it might be, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
David, what was your homework movie this week?
Well, much like last week's movie, I was advised by counsel that there are certain movies that have been reviewed on this channel, but were not reviewed on this show, and that technically qualify as sci-fi. Last time I did nope. This time was the other movie that I was advised I should get under my belt, which was the 2020 version of Invisible Man.
Yes.
Which is absolutely a horror film, and I am not as adept to those as you are. So when it came time to watch it, I'm like, oh God, what's it gonna be? I really, really liked it. I was actually very much into that. I don't know specifically what I could point to and say that I liked the most about it. I think what I found myself most drawn to was the fact that as I was watching the movie, this is the only movie I can think of where every single shot I was analyzing the background. My eye was always drawn to the background because I was just waiting for something to show up, because it's the Invisible Man. You never know where he's going to be, and constantly just waiting for something to happen. There he was. He just messed with Pete on his side of the audio.
Yeah, that wasn't me just dropping something that was fiddling with, not at all.
It was the Invisible Man. No, it's a very tense movie. I think it does a great job of setting up the Invisible Man for what, the dark universe will never be. I think that it's a very interesting...
This was never like this. This was like after that already died. This was not ever meant to be part of the dark universe.
Right,
just to be clear.
Absolutely. And I'm happy that it didn't, because it feels like if they tried to tie it into that, it'd be so much bloated than what it actually ended up being. This was very simple. It was very clear from beginning to end, but like it kept the tension up. And I think it does a great job on a metaphorical level as well, because obviously the entire thing is this metaphor for like how you feel as a victim of abuse and like stalking and stuff like that. And it's how do you deal with that? And I really appreciate the way that they covered that in the movie. So,
and the idea that no one else notices all of it but you. And it's like, but it's very true here because the guy's invisible. So like no one else can see it.
Yep, exactly. So I think overall, I'm going to give this one a super high rating. I'm going to say this one's an 8.5 for me. I think it probably could have gotten the 9 if I were just a little bit more into horror, but because I'm a little bit removed from that, I was kind of, a tiny bit hesitant with it. I was not willing to give it my full enthusiasm. But I would honestly say if I had to sit down and show somebody like a good, I wouldn't even call it a slasher film, but it's not, but just that idea of the creature, the shape that's always stalking down a character. I think this is a great example of that in a modern setting. Yeah.
And it is worth mentioning that this, like all the other Invisible Man movies, were done on Ace, so you'll be doing them as homework at some point, all the classic ones. Because typically they do veer more sci-fi. This one is definitely a horror movie, but it's still science fiction. In fact, in some ways it's more science fiction because it's like technology based. But But
it came out from Blumhouse, so it had to be over on Screams.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to make a judgment call, and it made sense to do that in Screams. But I think when we're talking about the best sci-fi movies of the first half of the decade, which is coming up very soon, in fact, just a couple of weeks' time, I think it has to be in consideration, and that meant David had to watch it. So the council, being me, told him, watch it.
Yes. I am a slave to the council.
Yes.
And its fascist demands.
What I actually thought you were going to do was watch one of those Predator movies you haven't watched because the animated one's coming up. But I suppose it's not the end of the world if you don't get those before then.
Yeah, I'll do my best, but it was really a priority to get that under the belt beforehand.
You can get them before the new live action one because you'll have to have seen Prey by the time the new one comes out for sure.
I already did Prey.
Oh, did
I got Prey under my belt.
But you've still got The Predator and Predators to do?
Yep.
Right, okay.
I skipped the ones that have been regarded not as well, because I didn't think it was important to get them done in time.
Well, you've got so much to look forward to then.
Yeah,
but that
great.
is the show, everyone. Oh, sorry, how'd it go?
Sorry, I'm still regretting saving Transformers until probably the very end of this show, because it's all just going to hit me at once.
Oh, you have to do it like 6 weeks in a row.
Yep.
Yep. There you go. All right, everyone, that has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. So again, no Ace next week, but there is a collector's cut on the Tuesday instead. And then we're back the following week with 2 episodes of Ace. One's a movie review for, I mean, I don't think it'll change now, but it should be The Gorge, which was that Apple movie that came out recently. And then the Saturday episode later that week will be our top 10 sci-fi movies of the first half of the decade, that being 2020 to 2024. Think of it as a kicking off the summer kind of countdown special, or whatever you want to call it. But that is us. Thank you very much for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep watching Science Fiction and Computer at Salsa.